But how quiet it is.
Oh. All right, good evening. Welcome to tonight's regular board meeting of the Superior School District Board of Education. We have met compliance with official notification. Roll call, please.
Nick Olson,
Here.
Nick Schumacher. Here. Brooke Taylor.
Here.
Diana Smith.
Here.
I'm here, President Olson.
Here. This time, would you all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have that sign up sheet there.
I like to do a full circle.
This meeting is a meeting of the Board of Education held in public for the purpose of conducting the school district's business. It is not to be considered a public community meeting. There is a time for comments by members of the public during the meeting as indicated on the agenda. Members of the public wishing to address the board on any of the topics included on tonight's agenda may do so by signing up on the public comments sign-up sheet prior to the start of the meeting. The board requests refraining from making any comments involving personally identifiable information about students, staff, or administration. Comments should be respectful, focused on the items being considered by the board, and will be restricted to 3 minutes in length. Action taken at today's meeting will be final approval unless otherwise noted. So first of all, our first agenda item is comments by members of the public. We welcome you to the podium when your name is called. Melanie Barnes.
Hi, my name is Melanie Barsness, and I'm one of the elementary teacher librarians in the district. I'm also the parent of a middle schooler. And I want to talk about policy 2522. I'm going to say with all honesty, when we read 2522 as a library team, we were giddy. This is exactly what we've been waiting for. We've been reading library policies like this, well, for 20 years, but really intensely for the last 4 to 5 years, knowing that we needed to have something like this in place. And so when we finally got our hands on the language of this Neola, at that time, Neola policy, we're like, this is exactly what we're looking for. And we're seeing many other libraries, school libraries across the state adopting that policy or similar ones. And when I say like we're excited about 2522, that is with the reconsideration committee intact. That committee is a crucial part of this. That committee, I've served on a reconsideration committee before, and that allowed us to give the librarians a voice as to explain why that material is an important part of the collection. I was reading 2 different Wisconsin statutes and 2 different administrative policies, and they all talk about the importance of a collection to reflect the cultural diversity of our pluralistic society. And those are the books that are getting challenged the most. And so I think it's really important that somebody who is an expert in book selection is available to explain the importance of that book to the collection. And I have to just say, when you've selected one of those books to read aloud and there's that kid that needs to hear that story, you watch them light up and it changes their whole day. Like sometimes that's that quiet kid and they recognize that's me, and they just light up. They feel more a part of the classroom community, the school community. So I just really encourage you to adopt policy 2522 with the committee intact options.
Thank you.
Good job. Our next speaker is Kyle Smith.
Good evening, I'm Kyle Smith. I teach at the high school. I was going to address 2522 and policy 9130. in the minutes. So I don't know if that means I get 9 minutes to speak.
You have 3 minutes.
It's 3 separate topics. So I'll just be quick. I sat in last week and kind of learned about the different policies and the different options. And in the last week, talked to many different people and asked what's just to get a better understanding for myself about the committee and stuff, and seeing that one option is supporting the committee and the other option is not. It just seems that we need to have the committee on both options, that the teacher's voice needs to be heard. And I appreciate the Superintendent Starzecki said about, might be difficult to get teachers on the board, or maybe looked at maybe protecting teachers. So they have to go through the process, but I think it is an important process that teachers need to be part of. Maybe we can talk about decorum when the committee is meeting or something and have some guidelines. But I think it is important to support the teachers by having a committee in both policies. So all I have to say about that one. The minutes, I think I appreciate the kind of idea of hoping to save some money on both accounts of adding to the day and then the snow days. I would just like to see more details. Like some of the board had mentioned that this would have ramifications on contracts and handbook language. And I guess I would rather wait for making a decision, especially on minutes of the day, until we can see what would that look like, especially for teachers as a handbook. That's less days of, sorry, Crystal, I don't want 4 more days of in-service. I know. So maybe somewhere in the middle, but so I guess for that, it seems like we may have a little bit of time before a decision has to be made on the minutes, but it'd be nice, the devil's in the details. Yep, let's go and then start realizing what the details are. 3 minutes. All right, that's fine. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Smith. Our next speaker is Emily Kelly.
Hi, thank you for allowing the space to hear our voices tonight. Earlier today, I wrote a letter from the perspective as a teacher within the high school with our amazing district, but now I'd like to address the board as a parent of 3 Spartans in this great district. My husband and I had an opportunity when looking for our first home to live in Duluth. And though I am a Minnesota gal through and through, we confidently chose Superior due to the exceptional education Superior School District provides all students. When hearing about policy 9130 and the possible removing of the committee, when an issue is brought forth with curriculum, I was immediately concerned about what implications that could have on my family. As a parent, I know that we have the right to opt out of any curriculum we do not see fit as the right fit for our family. My concern with erasing the committee's role would be the silencing of the very people I entrust my children's care and education to 5 out of the 7 days of the week. Superior School District has outstanding educators and staff. Between state recognized teacher of the year, curriculum director of the year, and many other highly acclaimed recognitions, I know that my children's educators and staff are giving their full effort and attention to giving the best possible education to all of our children. I want to know that the educators and staff who work hard and are experts in their field are given the due diligence to have their expertise, guidance, and reasoning behind their curriculum heard. The only way to do this, and to ensure that it is done the same way today as it will be years to come, is to keep the committee the way it is, to allow all stakeholders the place to hear all sides of any issue brought forth on curriculum concerns. So please keep option 1 for policy 9130 in place to allow our amazing educators and staff a voice. They are the experts in their professions, and we as parents will always have the right to opt out when the education for all is not the right fit for us. Thank you.
Our final speaker, Rachel Holden Kaufman.
Hi, everybody. If you don't know me yet, I'm Rachel Holden Kaufman and I teach English and communication at the high school. I have a question for you tonight and then I have an ask. So my question is in regard to language in the first paragraph of policy 9130, where some language is changed. I do understand that a lot of these decisions come from RILA and they're legal decisions, legal language decisions to protect the district. But the way I read it, the district would no longer have a duty to protect staff from unnecessary harassment, but would now reserve the right to protect staff and students. So I'm glad students are in there as well, but that seems like a step backwards. So having been here last week and hearing some of the concerns that were raised about a committee, I'm wondering, what can we do to encourage staff voices and make staff and students feel like they will be protected by their district? And not just reserve the right, but actually have a duty to protect us. So thank you for pulling that up and taking a look at it. As you saw, if you checked your email today, I also have already reached out asking that you vote for option 1 for both policy 9130 and 2522 to ensure that rationale for curriculum decisions and for library material decisions will be voiced. Without a committee as part of the policy, there is nothing guaranteeing that educator rationale will be shared. There's nothing guaranteeing that decisions that have been made will be contextualized in the case of a concern. And so I can't understand why the board, who tell us all the time, we value our teachers, we're proud of our district, would want to do anything that would take our voices away from a process. So please strongly consider to vote for option 1 for 9130. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is the disposition of minutes from January 8th, 2024.
Motion to accept.
Second. The motion and a second to accept the disposition of minutes from January 8th, 2024. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Next, we have the report from our superintendent.
All right, my first item tonight is our Spartan Showcase Awards that we presented last week. Do you have pictures of those? Did Ann give you pictures of those for the board tonight? The poster, no? Maybe not. Oh, maybe not.
Yeah.
It's okay. It's online. But I do want to just recognize the 2 Spartans that we honored last week. We honored staff and students at Northern Lights Elementary. Principal Parrish actually recognized all of the nominees that were nominated. So she recognized all of the students, and then those that got the most nominations, we awarded our Spartan Showcase. And so Akira Williams is a student at Northern Lights. I just want to read a little bit of her nomination. She is a smart, kind, respectful student. She works hard in school every day. She's made amazing gains academically due to her hard work and commitment to learning. She always has a smile on her face and other students seem to gravitate towards her. She's an excellent example of what it means to be a junior Spartan and embodies work respectful on. This teacher indicated she's had that student for 2 years. She's always kind and shows empathy. She works hard every day. She's happy to help others and exceeds in everything she does. So there she is right there. So that was very fun. We had an assembly and were able to recognize those nominees, but we also, I think, recognize the attendance awards and things at the same time. That is last month. There you go. So Megan Erickson was the staff person that was nominated for our Spartan Showcase. She is a teacher at Northern Lights. And so I just want to say a little bit about the nomination. It says, Megan is so passionate about engaging students in a meaningful learning activities. She spends time outside of her classroom to learn best practices. She's a wealth of information to staff. She shows our behavioral standards through everything that she does. She's a strong leader in our building. She provides professional development and guidance and best practices in reading and math. She's an asset to PLCs, and she's a dynamic leader at Northern Lights. And so it was nice to recognize the teacher. I called her name at the assembly and she didn't get up because she didn't think I was talking about her. So I had to say it a couple times. So, yeah, so those are wonderful events that we had last week. So congratulations to them.
That's good.
Right, and then we have Autumn up for our students report.
All right, so 2 weeks ago, Student Council held our annual snow week. We didn't run any after-school events during this week because it was jam-packed with home sports games. Our sportsmanship council was able to run a bunch of games in between hockey periods and halftime of basketball games. That was pretty neat. We were able to get things donated from Jersey Mike's, Dairy Queen, and the Spartan Shack to give away to the winners. So that was kind of a nice added touch to Snow Week. We also held an assembly on Friday. Our games and performances from Twirl and Cheer went very well. Our student participation and attendance was very good besides our senior class. There was minimal senior attendance, and I think if we do one again in the spring, we'll probably not do it at the end of the day, being that seniors have senior release and typically wouldn't come back for an event. I get it. And then also along with that, we held our first snowball, which was a super big success. We had about 260 kids attend the dance. Our ticket sales were used to cover decorations, a photo booth, and then the DJ. We were also able to pay the chaperones, which was a nice added touch and didn't take as much to rally chaperones this year. So that was cool. And then for seniors, the general scholarship application is due Wednesday, February 14th. Recently, our mock trial team competed in their regional competition in Eau Claire on February 3rd. They secured their spot and will be headed down to state the first weekend in March. So they'll be headed to Madison for that tournament. And then our Harvard Model UN team traveled up to Boston for their yearly event. I spoke with some of them and they said they had a fun and successful trip. On Tuesday, February 6th, our SHS Concert Orchestra and the SMS 8th grade orchestra got to travel to UWS and perform with some of those collegiate musicians. So that was cool. And then in our sports world, both the boys and girls hockey team held the annual pancake breakfast. This was the first time the girls hockey team did it as well with the boys, and they said it was record attendance, so that was cool. Yeah, and then our winter teams are moving into playoffs. Boys swim and dive wrapped up their season on Saturday at the sectional swim meet in Hudson. Boys basketball and girls basketball have been doing some giving back to the community. On January 15th, boys basketball had their shootout childhood cancer night. That was a super cool event, and they raised $6,500 for childhood cancer. And then on January 30th, our girls basketball team had their annual Hoops for Hope event. So that was super cool to see those Spartan basketball teams giving back to the community. And then a lot of spring sports teams have started open gym, and it's super cool to see them. They're actually being able to be on the field this year so far, which doesn't happen very often. So that's pretty cool.
Very different than last year.
Very, very different. And then lastly, Monday, March 4th will be the mandatory spring sports meeting. So lots going on.
Yeah, that's a big report. Thank you.
Congratulations to the Spartan girls hockey team receiving the #1 seed in our sectional. And I know our boys play tomorrow night or Thursday, I believe it is.
Yep, tomorrow night.
#5 seed. The girls basketball will also be hosting next Tuesday, the 20th. So
A lot going on.
pretty, yeah.
All right, I have one more item. I have some student reps from Spartan Spin and Miss Hinsman, who's here to give us an update. I will say we would like to have more students giving us updates at the board level. So this is an intentional effort to bring more students, and hopefully you'll see this at more meetings. So thanks for coming, guys.
Like Amy said, my name is Elise Hinsman. I'm one of the advisors for Spartan Spin, which is our student-led newspaper over at the high school. Tonight, we're going to tell you a little bit about Spartan Spin, but mostly about our really fun trip that we went on back in November. So if you aren't familiar, Spartan Spin is an English and a business class over at the high school. I teach alongside Krista Kalin, and then we also have our very generous and longtime
volunteer Jed Carlson, whom I'm sure many of you know. This year we have over 100 students on staff, which has been a really exciting number for us to hit. We have 3 class periods. And in addition to our business and English students, students at the beginning of this school year had the opportunity to apply for what we call our leadership board. Because it is a student-led class, we let students make decisions, plan fun activities and lessons for their classmates. And I brought 2 of those students with me tonight to tell you a little bit about our class.
So I'm Mariah. I've been in this class for this is my 2nd year, and I'm kind of on the print side of it, which is our news magazine. Our news magazine comes out once a semester. This one just came out a couple weeks ago, I think. And this class kind of takes student and staff voices and create stories for our website and our end of the semester. Another class we have is the business elective side of it. They work with advertisements, graphic design, and branding, and then also memberships for people in the community.
Ricky Little. This is my first year. I'm in Spur and Spin, and I'm a junior. I'm part of the webcast hour. We try to make a webcast episode that gets put onto our YouTube every week or so. It helps us just practice a lot of using technology and portraying a story we want to tell. We have community connections outside of the school, one of those being the Superior Telegram youth page, and then another one being iFan, where students and students can have the opportunity to announce on iFan at games. The Boston 2023 trip. It was approved in the spring of 2023. It was from November 2nd through the 5th. There was 36 students. That was the group picture right there. We all had our matching shirts before the opening ceremony. We had the 4 chaperones being Miss Hinsman, Judd, Miss Knoll, and then of course Miss Payne.
Conference highlights. We went to different conference sessions that we kind of got to choose based on our interests and what we enjoyed, and then also what we thought students would like to hear from us when we taught them when we got back. For example, I went to the ABCs of social media. It broke down the logistics, marketing, and branding through social media, and I was able to go out like on the street and do Man on the Street, which is like I interviewed people. Yeah, we were able to do different sessions, and there's like the Red Sox photographers, which is really cool to be able to hear what they do and like learn more about that. And there's a lot more that students went to too.
Some of the experiences of the conference, there was a big trade show going on for all 3 days that we were there. There's a bunch of colleges there. One of them being Missouri College that I have this shirt that I'm wearing. A lot of businesses locally there that were expressing, I guess, just help for journalism. And then there was a couple of giveaways. As you can see, the top 2 pictures up there are 2 people who got a giveaway. Networking, a lot of our students connected with other students from multiple other schools across the country. And that was just really interesting to see other schools compare to ours. We're in Boston, there's a lot of tourism there and taking photos. I know that I think we have a folder that has plenty of photos there, and the tourism options there are just wonderful.
What this trip meant to us. Going on this trip was a way for many of us to get out of our comfort zone in many different ways. Like I said, I was able to learn a lot about social media and do the Man on the Street things. And people just learned a lot of things, and
More on what this trip meant to us. This was a new perspective for us. Coming from a small city, going into a huge city like Boston itself is very different from here when you have to walk to places and watch out for traffic. Try not to That's a big difference from that. And then creating new relationships between meeting someone who you'd go to a store and meeting, or just someone on the street who expresses generosity.
So when we returned from our trip, students, like they kind of both mentioned, got to teach their peers about all the different sessions that they had been to. And since we have 3 different class periods, it was kind of a unique opportunity for students in all 3 class periods to hang out together, have this experience, and then come home. And even though a lot of students didn't get to go on the trip, they still got to share that well. That is all we have. If you have any questions about our trip that you would like to ask these 2 students, you are more than welcome to.
Looks like fun.
Yeah, it was a lot.
Yeah, all I'll say is, we as a board approve these trips all the time. And very seldom have heard the outcomes of the trips. So at least I appreciate, I'm sure everybody else appreciates hearing from you guys, but the students, more importantly, I think it's great that you guys are up here and coming out of that comfort zone to talk to us.
In a board meeting, yeah.
And the millions of people watching online.
So the picture of the pool, who got the special permission to go down and take a picture by the pool? Boy, that used to be taboo when I was there.
That person will go on.
It was in the 1900s. Thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
And my last item is just that I'll let you take the last item. Sound good?
Okay, so then at the committee of the whole meeting on February 5th, Danielle Parrish, principal at Northern Lights, gave her preview of what's happening at Northern Lights and what the plans are for the rest of the school year. That was very thorough. And on all of these and stuff, if anybody's following online, you can see the blue highlighted names of attachment. You can click on them to follow that as well. The next item up are our board committee reports. The first is the Personnel Negotiations Committee. Action items: administration recommends approval of the February 2024 new hirees and separations report.
Motion approved.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve the recommendations of new hirees and separations report. Could you call that up, please? Thank you. We certainly always welcome new people to our Spartan homes, and always sorry to see people resigning from the district, and then those that are retiring, we always wish them the best. There's some people that have put in a long service to our district, to our students, and many respects in our academic and athletic positions. So thank you very much for the commitment to Superior. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Administration recommends renewal of the administrator contracts for the 24-25 school year.
Motion approved.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve the administrative contracts for 24-25. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries. There were no discussion items and no informational items. Is there a motion to accept the Personnel Negotiations Committee report?
Motion accept.
Motion and a second to accept the Personnel Negotiations Committee report. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries. Operations Committee action items, none. Discussion items, none. Informational items. Pat Gillen, our Director of Transportation, provided us with an update from that department. This time I'd accept a motion to accept our Operations Committee report.
Motion to accept.
Second. Motion is second to accept the Operations Committee report. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carried. Budget and Insurance Committee action items, gifts, grants, and bequests. Administration recommends approval to accept gifts, grants, and bequests received in January of 2024.
Move to approve.
Second. Motion is second to accept the gifts, grants, and bequests report. Any further discussion? List is quite extensive this time. Certainly thank you to all of you who are donating to the district, no matter what you're donating to. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries. District calendar instructional day adjustment. Administration recommends adding 7 instructional minutes to the elementary 4K through 5 school day and 10 minutes to the secondary 6 through 12 school day, reducing the number of student school days by 4, starting with the 25-26 calendar as a way to reduce annual operation costs.
Are we separating those two?
Yeah, I
We are.
created 2 different bullets for that.
Make a motion to approve the adding minutes of the first bullet point.
Second. There's a motion and a second. To add to the instructional day, 25-26 school calendar.
I just reiterate some of the data that I shared last week, just as a refresher.
And when you do that, can you answer any of Kyle's?
Yeah, I'll try.
Maybe?
Yeah. So just as a reminder, this came out of our work this year when we were trying to see if we could free up some days at the elementary as a part of the literacy training that's required. We knew that we were over the instructional minutes requirement at DPI. We recognize this as a potential area that could be cost savings for the district without reducing more FTEs and more teachers than we already are facing as part of our budget deficit. So this was we were trying to come up with a creative way to do some further reductions. Just as a reminder, by saving 1 day, or by not having 1 day of school, that savings is $38,000. And so for 4 days, it'd be $152,000 annual savings that we would save, which is a little more than a teacher there when you consider salary and benefits. For transparency purposes, we explained the snow day as well, because we are paying $38,000 each day we have a snow day for those 2 traditional days. We're paying $38,000 each of those days that we don't have school, but we're paying for support staff on that day, and we're not providing any virtual learning. So that's for transparency purposes. If the board wants to continue doing that, we'll obviously continue supporting that work. Kyle's point around what are the implications of this, I think that's still yet to be known by the board. We brought this forward now, knowing that we're going to have to create some language in the April handbook for the committee to work through this next fall. So, the board could do a couple things tonight. You guys could just table this, and this could be, weaved into the handbook conversation in April. Or you could provide this guideline, and then we bring some language to you that you consider as part of the handbook. And then, that kind of gets at your point, I think, Kyle, is what's the implications? Just, I don't picture 4 professional days. But what do we, one of the things I talked about last week is I know at the high school in particular, having a day between semesters would be helpful. So that's an option that we could, implement things like that. So just to reiterate, you could table this and we could bring this forward along with the handbook changes in April, or if you approved it tonight, we'd bring forward handbook language that you guys would consider as a result of this. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Can you maybe reiterate to me what the handbook discussion would be pertaining to this?
We would need to articulate how many professional days would be in the school calendar. We'd need to, probably the biggest thing, what are we going to do with those 4 days? I think is the biggest question, right? Are they going to be professional development days? Is it going to impact salary? I'm thinking all the things that you would wonder about. What are some other, Yeah, well, the proposal would be that at the elementary, those days would be added at the beginning of the day, and then at the secondary, we'd add 5 at the beginning and 5 at the end of the day. We'd have to adjust when the teacher start and end time would be a little bit because of that. Yeah.
So I know a lot of emails were sent in regards to like elementary level, and I've seen it where they have a soft start that happens. So what does that mean for them? Because prep time is so important, but when you have kids coming in, it really isn't time anymore.
And actually, the elementary actually has more time before school without kids than secondary does, but that time's valuable. So it would be defined within the handbook how it is now. Right now, it currently says looking for Molly. It currently says staff need to be at the building 30 minutes before students to help with supervision and be there for active supervision. So that would that would still align to that expectation. The handbook says blanketly, you know, staff are expected to work 40 hours a week, so that would really impact that.
And then obviously, high school, it was brought to our attention that high school would be over by 40 hours a week. But again, because they're
Over by 40, what? 40, like instructional requirements?
yeah. Well, they said, I think the argument was in the handbook, it said that you would be 8 hours a day and now it would bring them to 8 hours and 1 minute a day.
So that goes back to the language when they start and end. So that language could be adjusted in the handbook.
So it
That reflects that.
change.
Correct. Correct.
And right now we're just talking about the calendar, not the snow days.
Correct.
Okay.
And one thing I said last week too is we are one of the schools that gets out pretty late compared to other districts. So my point being, getting out 4 days sooner isn't really atypical neighboring districts.
In that soft time, elementary schools, that's not considered a prep time.
Correct. They have a prep time during the day.
Because they get prep times either when the physical education comes in to take students, music or art.
Specialists, yep.
And do they have an additional hour during their day where they do not have? I don't remember, so.
No, so they get, Molly, is it 45 or 50 minutes that it says?
Minutes daily or 225 per week.
So that is tied to a specialist and it's tied to the lunch and the recess periods. Typically our teachers get more than that when you count the time before school as well, which is if their day starts at 8 and kids arrive, you know, at 8:45, that's some additional time before school.
I guess I'll ask, I'm sorry, Dan, I think you.
Oh, go ahead.
asked something.
I was just going to say the concern about our support staff and not paying them
Mhm.
on those 4 days. But when you say it's comparable to what other districts are doing as well, of course, we want to retain our support staff and they're super duper important. But if it's similar to what other districts are doing, and obviously we need to save where we can. So
I think Maple made this adjustment last year, if I'm correct. Am I right? I'm looking at, no?
They get out of school in the spring earlier.
Yeah, I mean, I think they made the same sort of adjustment last year.
The support staff are taking jobs in the summer. So getting off earlier gives them the opportunity to transition to their other job. Because that's what was happening with buses.
yeah. No, I think that's reassuring to know that that's what other districts are doing too, if we can save.
Mm-hmm. And it's not ideal. This is, you know, one idea that we brought forth to try to address the budget without reducing additional staff. So we brought it for consideration.
But maybe Kyle, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but you as SFT's leader per se, feel more comfortable with this language if you know what the handbook would say in regards to it?
Yeah, I definitely would feel more comfortable. Well, the agreement. Suggestion was to table it and it all comes together maybe
Mm-hmm.
same time again.
And,
Impact each other. That's why we brought it ahead of time.
and tabling this for another month.
It'd be till April, which is okay, because this wouldn't be in effect next year. This would be, yeah. If the board gave us some direction, like, hey, admin, please move forward with some handbook changes that reflect what this would look like, that would be our task for April. Is that fair? I don't want to speak for everybody.
I'm in support of tabling until April.
Wait a minute. Could this language for this particular situation be looked at sooner, like be worked on for March? Or at least something for us to look at and.
I could give, yeah, I'd like to just wrap it all into the handbook package in April, but I can certainly we can try to work on some language before that.
I see a lot of value in looking at the details alongside it.
I think it's a reasonable ask or a reasonable way to save money. But again, there's a lot in the details that we don't know yet. So I don't find tabling it to be,
Dave, are you okay with that? You're a money guy.
You guys are ready.
A real
I'm in
positive.
favor of it.
Can we just reiterate that you're tabling it, but directing us to come up with that language?
Correct.
So I would amend my motion to table this topic till April to coincide with handbook language that you'll provide us.
That sounds good.
There's a second. Motion and a second to amend the first motion that we would table now until the April meeting, and the administration would provide language for the
Handbook.
handbook,
Yep. Or 25-26.
25-26. All those in favor, any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries. The second one, the board may also consider eliminating snow days that are built into the school year, starting with the 25-26 calendar as an additional cost savings to the district. This would require any school closure to be virtual learning to meet DPI instructional minute requirements.
I make a motion to not eliminate snow days.
There's a motion and a second to not eliminate snow days. Is there any further discussion?
Just reiterating why we brought it forward, the amount that it costs us to run a snow day with staff.
I think a few of the things that were brought up are valid concerns about technology, accessibility, lots of work to prep. I know at the elementary level, it takes a lot of time. Even as a parent, it is a lot to take everything home, get it back, make sure everything's charged and ready to go. So I do hear those concerns, and I think that they are valid.
I just say something that's a money guy. I think when I've heard a lot of pushback or feedback on it is the nostalgia. Yeah, I had snow days when I was growing up. I didn't mind to have snow days. And you're looking at it, $38,000 a day. Snow days, virtual days aren't going to be the same. Elementary teachers aren't going to sit in front of a computer and teach to a kid 8 hours a full day. They are going to be different. They're still going to get the learning experience they have out of there. As far as if you look ahead of time, I think Crystal and her team is going to be doing that work regardless, because we haven't had snow this year is the total exception. We're going to burn snow days, multiple snow days. Virtual days is going to be a norm going forward. I think it's just a matter of people seeing what the new snow days, the new snow day is the virtual day, which, I remember when my son had it, gym class was you have to go shovel the walkway for 20 minutes. I think kids are going to enjoy their virtual days similar to how they enjoyed their snow days, except now it's going to be more structured. And then what comes about it is, towards the savings, which is, $38,000 for 2 days, you're looking at almost $80,000. Entry level teacher is $40,000 on the salary schedule, plus another 20 on the benefit side. All of a sudden, we're looking at, that's a teacher.
And there's arguments on both sides of it. I mean, you hear from the community too, that 2 snow days isn't enough for our area, and they're upset about virtual days beyond that. So it's tough. You can't really please everyone. And from the money side, that does make sense, but it's hard because we're trying to hear from as many people and parties as possible and make the best. It's tough.
Yeah, and I just think all kids don't have the same experience with a virtual day.
Yeah.
Not everyone has the support at home. And even if I know the teachers will support the students when they come back to school if they haven't been able to do their work and everything, but I think 2 snow days is fair. Like Brooke said, there are people who believe we need more. I'm sure we've had more in the past at some point, but to kind of keep that consistency with the support and education we're providing within our district.
So if we have virtual days instead of a snow day, how does the district, maybe this is a Crystal question, maybe you, but how does the district track that every kid actually studied for 8 hours to go towards the total hours of the year?
That's not what we're doing.
Okay, so I mean, how are we tracking or how are we knowing that kid from Bryant who had teacher that sat in front of a screen for 8 hours gets the same education as a kid from Cooper?
Oh.
Maybe that teacher only put 4 hours in front of a
Do you
screen.
want to talk through that?
So how are we managing that to make sure the hours are?
So our elementary grade levels across the district like collaborate. So there's a consistent plan that like all the teachers that teach kindergarten across the district, or all the teachers that teach first grade across the district, like talk about, and that really came from COVID because there had to be consistency. So some of those structures have remained in place. It certainly is never at any grade level, 8 hours in front of the screen. Literally by ed might be shoveling, or doing exercises, things like that. We fill out a report to DPI about our, we have to be ready to, I want to say potentially be audited on.
We just have to submit how we captured our instructional minutes.
Yeah.
Here.
Yep. So if a teacher has an instructional plan for their 25 first graders, for example, and what they do during that schedule for the day, some of it might be so many minutes reading, might be SIAD giving a direction, something art related, and then there might be math. They certainly have their 2 virtual times a day that students can join. Like all of those things encompass the instructional minutes. So there is no family by family, kid by kid, here's exactly what that looks like, but a teacher lays out a plan, just like they would if the students were in the seats for the day, saying here's what our daily schedule looks like.
One of the pieces of feedback we got in our survey from families last year was they felt good about the elementary. I feel like we have pretty consistent expectations across the elementary school. One of the pieces of feedback is they wanted more time connection to the teacher at the secondary level, at more similar to the elementary level. So we added that layer for this school year, that there's an additional time where secondary teachers are available to students, but that was one piece of feedback we got from families that they asked for that.
Starting in the middle of October, we have a district plan on what our virtual days will look like that lays it out for each of the levels. The principals go over that with their staffs at their October staff meeting. So we're ready in case the snow flies that early and we're going to need it. So there's a consistent district plan on paper on how the time is supposed to be, then how attendance is tracked, what functions as students being in attendance, the work that they turn in or complete. And that looks different for kindergartners versus 7th grade social studies.
So how difficult is it for, at any level, the teacher to throw a plan together? Snow day happens, don't find out till 5:30, 6 in the morning. How difficult or easy is it for the teacher to throw that plan together to go virtual for that day? That's assuming that they did take home computers and all that. But just to put together that plan, that education for the day, or is that part of your plan to have, this is what will be taught on that day if this happens?
So in that plan that we roll out in October saying, here's what the virtual learning will look like at each level, teachers are instructed to make sure they're thinking about what this plan will look like. So usually with a PLC, so for example, all of the 3rd grade teachers at Cooper, they've got their kind of backup plan rolling kind of ready. So I would say there's kind of a draft or a structure of that. What the kids are exactly going to do that day does require work on the teacher's part because it depends on what they've done the day before. So the math assignment or the writing that they're having kids do, it's designed to be actually we have to call it our continuity of learning plan. It's not supposed to be.
It's not meant to be super rigorous. It's meant to ensure that we continue learning for the day so we don't have to extend the school year into the summer. Because we know adding days in the summer isn't necessarily great either.
It's absolutely true that teachers have to do some prep or last minute change their plans on what their next day is going to be. And our teachers, because they're dedicated, they do that.
We do try to plan this out before snow events. So we try to talk through this in October and give people some time to be thinking about that.
So to add on to that, let's say, every class has a couple of kids that don't make it online, don't have internet, don't have computer functional, or it's not charged, whatever the case is. There's an assumption in my mind that that kid will get the instruction when they go back to school. But there's also the thought, well, how they get in that instruction. Is that same teacher stopping what they're doing with the rest of the class to catch this kid up as another support staff member or something coming in and just working with a kid one-on-one? Like, what does that look like when a kid doesn't get online?
I would say, especially at the elementary level, that answer you don't know until what tomorrow's going to look like when the kids come back in person, until you know how many might have missed it. I'll give an example. If I was a third grade teacher and 10 of my students didn't really engage or join for the math lesson or do the math work, I'm going to have to do something different the next day, probably with my whole class, versus if 2 students didn't do that. So the answer, I think, is really dependent on what happened the day before. Our attendance guidelines, I would say, for teachers are clear that students need the opportunity to be able to make up that learning when they come back. Like, we would not hold that against a student or count them absent if they then are able to do the work once they're back in session. Because as you kind of alluded to, every kid's family situation is a little bit different depending on where they have to be that day. Not all kids get to be at home on Wi-Fi and be able to do that. So I mean, I know this is kind of a challenging thing to hear maybe, but it's dependent on the number of kids that.
Right. So, I mean, I could understand, like, if the whole class didn't show up, you're probably gonna teach them what you want, but I'm just saying, like, 1 or 2 kids. Is it that teacher taking sometime out of the day or something to make sure those 2 kids are caught up, or is it someone else coming in?
We've also tried to make sure there was no new learning introduced on those days, so it should be more of a continuation, so.
If you're a primary grade teacher, another example might be that one of the stations or centers you have during math time, I keep using math as the example, maybe the one that might have the most gap in their learning if they don't get that. A station might be with the teacher with 3 or 4 students that maybe missed that lesson or didn't engage with it from the day before. But I would say what I'm describing are things that our teachers do maybe on any given day if they have 2 or 3 students who are absent in person the day before anyway. You know, our teachers have to adjust that based on any day.
If they're not there for virtual learning, or if there's not engagement, are they counted absent or no?
So that absolute day, no. We have to give them, or we've strived to give them the opportunity to be able to make up that learning when they're back in school. We learned during COVID that it really was detrimental to the students because we can't control what all their situations are during the day if we're marking them absent and not giving them the opportunity to be able to make up the learning or the assignment. So they have an extended period of time to make up that learning. At the kindergarten level, it's not going to feel like an assignment that they're making up as much as, again, maybe like a 6th grade math class where they have to make up their assignment and do it.
So if they're not doing it during this is what I struggle with. If they're not doing it during the virtual day, which are counting for our hours of instruction, and then they're coming to school the next day and taking time out of that day to do what they should have done yesterday. So they're missing, I mean, it's kind of like getting the hours in, but they're not really getting the hours in.
Correct. And I would say what you just described is on any given day when students are when we're in school in session anyway. Do you know what I mean? Like students are coming back from absences all of the time.
And they're absent. It's counted as an absence.
Yep.
If they
don't engage, it's absent also.
They don't do a virtual day.
Yeah, it's absent. It's marked as absent.
It wasn't.
Well, we give them the opportunity to pick up the learning and
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
So after an extended period of time, if they haven't turned in, they didn't engage that day. Again, I'll just do maybe 6th grade math. They didn't engage that day with the lesson. Didn't turn in their assignments. The teachers worked with the student. Hey, you got to get that in. You got to finish that. Then there is an absence. But we don't do that right away.
So they're not still language that specifically addresses excused and or unexcused absence, where a student has the right to make up the missing.
Yep.
So theoretically, you're only having a cost savings if you go beyond 2 snow days.
No, the issue that we wanted to bring forward to the board is when we have the traditional snow days, we are paying out $38,000 a day. We are not providing instruction on those days.
Right, but
And those
if you just make those snow days virtual days, you're
Yep.
still paying for those days.
Nope, wouldn't be paying for the support staff,
Staff, support, okay. So that 3 is just.
the support staff. It's our food and it's our transportation service savings. Which we don't pay those on those virtual days because we've already,
Gotcha.
whatever you call it, exhausted our other.
Any further?
Yeah, I have one more thing. So if snow days aren't used, what do we do with those days? And is there the saving?
I've never had that experience here.
Well, and that's why it might be a
Let's follow up that bridge.
year. I don't want to bring it up prematurely, but that's what I'm saying. We don't want to jinx it.
Yeah.
But would there be savings for those 2 days then? If we
Yeah, if we
got out
don't
early?
if we don't have 2 days of school, we get out. If we ended school 2 days early, there'd be a savings there. I'm looking at David for validation.
Yes.
Okay, okay.
All right.
Well,
When we
I mean, if we don't have a snow day this year, the end day would be bumped up.
I've been told that in the past that has happened in this district. That has not happened in my tenure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes we just
Right.
gone to school those days.
Yep.
Sometimes we've ended the school year early.
Yes, that's really been at the discretion of the superintendent at the time.
Yep.
I can think of 2 that allowed that.
Oh,
Just
I
kidding.
can think of a 3rd that wouldn't allow it.
So would you not do it?
yeah.
Oh, it is.
It's
I'll tell you
hard on
about it later.
families, 'cause
Yeah.
That's the other thing is with that, we have a hard and fast date that we're done. Wouldn't be surprised if.
Oh, sure.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There would be no,
The
yeah, flexibility.
2 years, the 2 times that I specifically remember it, and it was by 2 separate district administrators. They let the staff know someplace along in May, by the way, here's the present. We are out 2 days earlier.
The presence to the staff, what can be mentioned.
True.
Yep.
So the reality to think about too is the budget and money, saving money. 150 with the first one, another 78,000, 64 with the other one.
125 total.
76.
So,
I mean,
That's a superior education.
you're superior.
So I am,
I got my calculator. You're adding yours up.
so keeping that in mind, I mean, we talk all this other stuff, but there is still a budget issue that we need to deal with and find places to make appropriate cuts that are not in staff, but in money.
I agree. I think, just taking this one, this seems like a more feasible one, less effect on, I think, in the moment. Lips say otherwise, but
I just think the computer aspect, the tech, getting computers home, having that routine throughout the winter with elementary kids.
And doing all their work on a screen.
this is where we aren't getting feedback. We're getting teachers and staff, but what about community?
But remember, I sent out the survey. Oh, okay. Yeah, I did send out the survey about the snow days, but
Right.
not eliminating it. Yeah.
But we aren't hearing, because I do think that it will be shocking to families in the district to see no snow days now. What are these people thinking? Why are they doing that?
If you weren't in this position, everybody wants a snow day. I mean, be real, everybody wants a snow day. We're in a position, we're talking about money, budget of the district, making decisions for the district, not just what we would like to have.
Well, it's not easy to do virtual days with multiple kids at home, and not all kids have the same support at home. It's, if you have a supportive home environment to do the schoolwork, yeah, for every kid, but we are trying to speak for every kid in the district. And they will not all have the equal learning that day. And yes, they will have support when they come back to school, but that's going to take away from their learning time that day in school as well.
To go, but she's excited about this conversation. She goes, I don't want to leave.
It's recorded, you
I know.
can answer later.
You got to cheer extra long until we hit 1,000.
Oh.
Thanks.
Yeah, have a good, yeah.
Cry about it.
So we have a motion and a second to not to eliminate snow days. Is there any further discussion?
How about we change it to table and have more thought on it?
I think that's just inherent if we don't pass it.
I mean,
I think we could just talk about it whenever if we don't pass it.
Meeting, you can always bring it back up.
Right.
I'm trying to think from a board member standpoint and a parent, and I'm thinking of both, and I know the budgetary right now with the board, but as a parent, I really think there still needs to be 2 snow days. I do.
I need you to put your
Yeah.
governance board hat back on.
Yep. But we don't have representatives right now from the community. I mean, we do.
We are
not-
elected.
you are the representative.
We are
of the
elected
community.
by our community to represent them and this is one of the toughest things, no matter what. And you know this. Sometimes I go too far emotionally, but the fact of the matter is we have to think about our school district, our budget, and how are we going to maintain what we have? This is a budgetary thing. We could talk till the ends of the earth with people coming to meetings and stuff, but that's our collective responsibility here as the board, serving this school district, this community, to make that decision. That's my opinion.
But our number one focus is always student centered. And if virtual days are not in the best interest of all of our students, then that is another thing that we have to consider when canceling that.
But at the same time, laying off another employee at that rate is not student center either then.
And I hear and I respect what you're saying. I can't be remiss though by not, the number of students that miss school days in the school district, we know it's not acceptable. So there's a number of kids that if I miss tomorrow's school day, I'm unexcused. My parent doesn't call me and whatever. When I come back the next day, the same responsibility that teacher had the day before of trying to teach me on a snow day. Now tomorrow's my unexcused absent day. That doesn't change. We still have the responsibility to teach that student. I understand the challenges of virtual learning, but I don't think it's a change in the scenario with the kids.
We do have more time to figure out logistics.
We do, Nick.
Technology wise, getting things in place where virtual learning is
We have a choice,
a little easier.
right? We have a choice to move on with the motion to see what the vote is. We have a choice to Brooke would have to agree to amend and table it for further discussion. So we have those 2 options. I will call for the question if you want. Brooke, I'm offering you the opportunity. Do you wish to amend your motion or call for the question?
I guess we can table it until.
You need to do what you feel in your.
I don't know if we're gaining anything by tabling it though, because I think regardless, Crystal and the team is still gonna be working towards options. Assuming,
We still have a virtual learning plan and we still have a really good plan and our teachers do an awesome job of planning and implementing those days. So,
2 snow days this year, 2 snow days next year. So there's time.
right. I mean, we still have it built into our current calendars.
And so if it fails, then that would just mean that the snow days are eliminated if I don't table.
You
No?
need to make another motion and have another vote.
Then I'd like to call the question.
All right. There's been a motion and a second that reads not to consider eliminating snow days that are built into the school year, starting with the 2025-26 calendar. as an additional cost savings to the district. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Aye.
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 Motion is denied.
And I know we don't gain a whole lot by tabling that. But I would rather table it than just say cut snow days.
We can we not at a further date bring this up again?
This is not an urgent, it's just connected to the previous action item and
So I'll make a motion to table it. We have more thought on
Further
it.
discussion.
Aye.
Motion and a second to table snow day item. Is there any further discussion?
Can this get out before we have our next discussion on this? Can this get out more to the community to get feedback from families and the hardships and the challenges that may come with eliminating?
well,
All watching online right now.
remember we did push out a survey and when we asked, do you want to extend the school year or have snow days? They voted for keeping snow days by over 80% of families. So I think if you said, would you like a snow day or virtual learning? I think everybody, which is Ed's point, would want a snow day. This is a budgetary question. So I guess that I'll look to the board on how you want to handle that.
It is a budget. It is, but it's also adding valuable learning.
Oh, yeah, I think we know what the community wants.
Yeah, look at this here, for example. I'll be the bad guy if we end up with a snow day, but we're doing pretty good without a snow day right now. Education's happening. I mean, right?
So can I need to ask all of you that voted, have you sat down with your child to do a virtual day to see how it is, what it's like,
Yes.
and the value and importance of it?
Yes, and I honestly, I from my perspective, because I've done it a couple times with my kids, because, you know, even though my wife's a teacher, so it's not really, she's off, like, I've sat with my kids and just like Steve said, it's not something they can't catch up on the next day.
I have
Takes
not
away from
answered.
learning the following day.
But again, it's like, you miss a regular day of class, you don't get
It's not,
time to stop.
it's not the
Catch up.
Absent that day, though.
and that's not a
Being marked
dis.
absence, yeah, but it doesn't matter. The learning is the same. You're not gaining any learning because you're marked absent. You're still missing. It's still. Snow day, we're just required we're not required to offer the learning. That's all. Like,
We've just extended our calendar by 2 days. I mean, by doing that.
now I personally, from a parent's perspective, like, I don't think my kid's missing much by missing if he missed a virtual day or if he was there and, you know, wasn't paying attention. Not that I'd let him do that because I don't, but I don't think, you know, I can control it as a parent because I'm involved with my kids and I realize that not all parents are. But, you know, I don't think it's something that they can't, you know, make up the next day or come along with.
I just think every student is going to be absent. And they all realize that, and they all have to do that at some point in their school careers. It's just the way things are. So having a virtual learning, whether they learn or not, they have to just figure it out the next day, which happens when they're sick. Same thing happens.
So there's a motion and a second to table. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries. Discussion items at the committee of the whole meeting on February 5, 2024. David C., Director of Business Services, provide an update on second Friday in January 2024 pupil count. As you can see, as we've been talking about declining enrollment, not below 4,000 students at the January count.
What point are we considered no longer Division I school? Do you know?
No, I don't know.
That varies. There's a formula that they use. The number of schools, their
Like an average.
yes, they allow, in some sports, they allow X amount of teams in Division I. And some, they just go right down the line until they hit their 16 top teams for the tournament. And then they take the next and the next and the
We're
next.
still one of the largest school districts in the state of Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Top 30.
The football program, even though we are considered Division I in all of our other sports, is in Division II, but that's only because of the way they layer out their tournament series.
The big hit on students is the elementary side, so.
Yeah.
It's getting down.
Yeah.
Right. Informational items, Fund 10 revenue and expenditure preliminary reports. We were able to review them within the last week. We were happy that you received some funding finally.
This doesn't know, but we got our Title I claim.
Oh.
Next Saturday, today. So it's another $550,000 beginning the next couple weeks. So that was good.
They're always positives. David also presented to us review of the 2024-25 budget updates. And that there is a health insurance advisory committee that they'll be meeting to look at various insurance to see where we'll be.
Got some questions from the committee that I was able to relay to our broker, and we were able to turn around the questions in 2 days. So it was good feedback, good questions that we got from these.
This time I'll accept a motion for the budget insurance committee.
Motion accept.
Second.
Motion to second, accept the budget insurance committee report. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Teaching and Learning Committee action items, none. Discussion items, none. Informational items. At the committee of the whole meeting on February 5, 2024, the following people provided updates. Crystal Hinsman, Director of Curriculum Instruction, Summer School Update. NOAA ELP Grant, Staff Development Days Update. Kate Tesh, Director of Continuous Improvement and Assessment, gave the AGR mid-year update. Kate said when she walked out the door, does anybody remember what AGR was? Anyway, Jennifer Willoughby, Director of Early Childhood and Family Education, enrollment for 4K began on Tuesday, February 6th.
Motion to accept the Teaching and Learning Committee.
Okay.
And a second to accept the Teaching and Learning Committee report. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Okay.
Motion carries. Policies and Rules Committee action items. Administration approves approval of changes to the following policies based on Neola recommendations in order to be in compliance with state and or federal law updates. Second reading of policy 2460.03, independent education evaluation, IEE.
Motion to accept.
Second.
Motion and a second to accept policy 2460.03. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Second reading of policy 2700.01, school performance and state accountability report cards.
Motion approved.
And then a second to approve policy 2700.01. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries. Second reading of policy 1213, student supervision and welfare. Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion is second to approve policy 1213. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries. Second reading of policy 3213, student supervision and welfare.
Motion approved.
Second. Motion is second to approve policy 3213. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Second reading of policy 4213, student supervision and welfare.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve policy 4213. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Second reading of policy 3120.04, employment of substitutes.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve policy 3120.04. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Second reading of policy 8146, notification of educational options.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and second to approve policy 8146. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Second reading of policy 8740, protection of district funds.
Motion approved.
Motion and a
Second.
second. Policy 8740. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries. Second reading of policy 9130, public requests, suggestions, or complaints.
Motion to approve option 2.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve option 2 of policy 9130.
Can I, President Olson, can I just provide a little bit of information before you guys talk?
Yes.
I just wanted to take a minute to reiterate some of the points that I shared last week, as well as to provide some more context for why the options are here today. In the most recent curriculum complaint that we had, teachers and principals were heavily criticized for their work when we were addressing the complaint, and I shared that last week. I received a number of complaints from board members and community members that the committee was potentially biased, staff involved were not necessarily objective, and some thought that staff were too closely connected to the situation to make an objective recommendation. As a result of that feedback, we provided option 2 to the board for consideration to address the complaints regarding the committee process. Since Monday, I have met with a variety of teachers in a variety of contexts, and I've spoken to many regarding these 2 policies in particular. I want to just speak on behalf of the educators in those meetings that I've had with them. I think my statements will probably be consistent with what you already heard tonight. Even though staff experienced a high level of stress due to the criticism they received during that process, our teachers feel very strongly they want to continue to have a voice in that process. And so that was one thing that came through loud and clear. Even though it was stressful, they felt that process was still important. Staff feel that they bring expertise to the discussion when we talk about content knowledge as well as child development. And last week I shared that I was concerned that we may not have people who be able or willing to be a part of that committee process, given the experience that some folks had the last time. However, I feel pretty strongly based on the feedback that we've gotten over the last week and the conversations I've had with teachers that I think teachers will want to be a part of that process. So I just want to be sure that the board understands our recommendation as administration tonight is that we maintain options 1 for both 9130 and 2522. That is the option of Neola. And as I stated last week, it's important that if the committee does stay in place, that we think about how we best support our educators as they go through that process. So I just wanted to be really clear about, where this came from and kind of where our opinion is in regards to that. These options. So
I wanted to take a moment to thank everyone who took the time to send emails, reach out and share their input and give us their feedback on which option and why. I think it's important that we have clearly defined process too, and that we share all of the options with, the committee and the person making the complaint. I think a committee is important to have in place, and I think it's one more step that we can have in place to make sure that there's many voices that are heard and many perspectives given.
I too want to thank everybody who submitted your concerns by email and those who spoke tonight. Point of clarification, option 2 is not the recommendation of the district administrator. and/or district administration. What it was providing us with an opportunity of what the policy would look like if we did not have a committee. And I had to stand corrected on that as I misspoke during the week about this. My fellow board members, I am not in favor of option 2 for the following reasons. Option 1 is the current policy in place and is the recommendation of Neola, the company we work with to review and then approve our policies. As you are aware, the recommendations, which could include specific language, state statute, or federal statute update requirements, are highlighted in green for our consideration, and those no longer pertinent are in red and lined out. We do have the ability, though, to add and/or delete to make sure the policy is reflective of the needs of the children in our school district. It keeps the committee structure in place, which then provides best curricular decisions being made by those most qualified, the educators in our school district. Best decisions made by those most knowledgeable, most experienced, experts in their field, most informed, and most dedicated advocates for voices for all students. Trust. As I previously stated at a community forum at our last curriculum challenge, I wholeheartedly trust and support the work of all of our educators in our school district. They do their due diligence in their decision-making process, which allows them to present to us, the school board, pertinent, data-based, and research-based information, helping us to be able to make an informed education decision when and if we are called upon to do so. Finally, in the Administrative Guideline Manual Code AG 9130 titled Complaint Review Committee Procedures, this document provides a very clear and concise process needed to be followed by the committees formed to review complaints concerning instruction materials.
And I guess I just have one more request that right now we have a different option for both policies. I would really recommend that the option is the same just because the complaint process really should mirror each other. So if we have one committee or if we don't have a committee, it should look the same.
So how are members of the committee picked? The voluntary or is it being told?
I have to read the guidelines. I don't want to misspeak. I believe last time I helped to identify those committee members alongside the principals with those who were most knowledgeable about the curriculum itself.
Yep.
Looking at Crystal.
Lines like you have to have a board member.
Yeah, it gives me it. Yeah.
I don't know exactly how it says this, but basically like you wouldn't identify like random teachers. It would be people that
Are familiar with the curriculum that's being under question.
Right.
that's by a counselor.
Are those people told to do it because there's a committee, or those people, are you asking for volunteers to fill the seats of the committee?
Well, we specifically asked people who were closest connected to the issue. So like the last complaint, we had a variety. We consolidated across a number of buildings. So we wanted representation from all the buildings, for example. So that complaint was very different. Another complaint, we had another elementary school was specific to a first grade classroom. And it was in that teacher's classroom. So that teacher was invited along with someone else. Do you remember who else? Two teachers, two first grade teachers.
Board member.
Yeah.
And principal, myself.
Not the librarian is my point. It was a classroom library, right? Yeah.
That's why.
Yeah.
And any of those people tell you no, they don't want to do it? Yes.
Yeah.
So they'll answer for me. Yeah.
Okay, so let's just say everybody says no to being on the committee. Because let's say the scenario happened last time, and everybody says no. Then what?
I've never experienced that yet, so I don't know.
So if we have it in our policy that says we have to have this committee, and everybody says no to being on the committee, then how do we get through a complaint by following policy?
It's really not voluntary. So if the, if the complaint is, I'm just going to use,
Say no, but it's.
I'm just going to include the situation, not the previous one, but the one that happened several years ago. It was in that teacher's classroom. She doesn't have the ability to say no. We have to involve her in that conversation. So.
It's not voluntary.
Well, no,
Someone will step up.
Like the last one in the summer, obviously, if the representation across the buildings wouldn't have, like, the people would have been gone or not. It's not, like, it wasn't work days for them, like, people.
It wasn't voluntary last time. I asked specific people based on their content area and the building they're in. I said, I need you to be on this committee, and they said, okay. So if I have a complaint from a particular teacher's classroom, I would need that teacher a part of it. If I had a complaint from a library, I'd need the librarian a part of that. It's not like,
If they say no, are you honoring them saying no?
the situation is so dependent. I mean, like
Then if they do say no because it's too much of a hot button issue, are you penalizing them for saying no?
you're asking me very hypothetical. I need really, but like, for example, in the last complaint, if somebody said, hey, I got a vacation, I can't be there on those dates you're meeting, then I went to a different fifth grade teacher and asked them. Or if it was like the first example I gave you, where it was a first grade teacher and it's her classroom, then we arrange the meeting when she can be there because she needs to be there.
How many committees have we typically convened within a year? Typically,
This is my 11th year in the job, and I've experienced two for specific curriculum complaints that have gone to committee at the district level. There may have,
you've experienced 2 in 11 years. How many of those have gone to the board?
2.
Okay. So we've had 2 in 12 years and both have gone all the way to the board. So, and let me ask you this, we talk about people having their freedom of speech, people being able to show their expertise. Is anyone excluded from coming and speaking to the board? I mean, that's a rhetorical question because the answer is no. Anybody, whether it's community, staff, district, can come speak to the board when that gets to the board, right? So we're not limiting anybody's expertise to get to us. We're not limiting anybody's opinion or knowledge or anything like that to get to us. In the policy, it even says the board shall review the case by providing an opportunity for the complainant and the districts to respond to the complaint. That's providing an opportunity for everybody to respond to the board about that complaint. So again, 12 years of having 2 committees that have gone to the board, what happens at the board level is a representative of that committee still has to present their findings to the board. So those people still have to come to the board and speak to us.
I would imagine
right,
that that's probably going to be pretty typical. If a parent or whoever has a complaint about some curriculum, I would guess they're probably not going to be satisfied.
I will say I get probably 1 to 5 complaints a year about staff that align to that follow policy 91 and they haven't made it to the board because they have been resolved at the committee level or at that level. So when it comes to the staff complaints, those have not come to the board because they have been resolved.
Well, that's because I think there's a human being is able to change where curriculum, you're not, it's a set thing. My question is, at what point, 'cause it says 1 or more staff, 1 or more board members, do we ever have more than 1? Like in the times that we've done committees? Like when is it decided that we have additional or add somebody or not? I'm just curious that it's worded that way. Have we had that?
Not since I've been here.
in both scenarios I've been a part of, the chair of the teaching committee, who's ever on the board, has been the person that has been a member of that. That's what happened several years ago. And then he was the chair of that committee last year. That's why he was.
Okay. Just curious on that. Thank you.
So if people want a committee, what is the harm of having a committee? Even if you think it's going to come to you. Okay, so they went through the committee and it still comes to us. But then those 5 complaints that went through the committee and ended there, they don't go to us. Like that's 5 less that we have to deal with.
So I'll go back to the last committee that was convened and exactly what Amy said. Well, there's only been 2.
But there's been more for the staff and
Okay,
things.
Go back to the last committee. Amy specifically said, what did staff feel as a result of that? I mean, I can't remember all your words word for word, but
I can read it again.
you can't, but staff felt.
Staff felt stress.
Pushback from,
Staff felt stress as a result of the experience, but overwhelmingly, when I've talked to staff over the last week, they have felt like that stress was worth it because their voice was a part of a formal process.
And so we need to hear that.
so I guess to answer your question, the negative is the stress that the staff felt. The negative is the cost to convene the committees and have the
Minimum.
extra meetings.
Minimum.
Still a cost. And the end result is still coming to the board with.
But there's that extra layer that people seem to want and appreciate.
I think there's value in the committee in that there's just more people looking at the issue and you get more context. Yeah, there might be some bias, but that's our job to read through it and look at it with an unbiased opinion.
And I'll be honest, the committee makes a recommendation to me and I have three choices. I can accept the recommendation in whole. I can amend the recommendation, or I can not adopt the recommendation and make a different recommendation. And so I'm also that layer of, I also bring that lens also to the table in trying to.
Right.
Yep. We've heard from multiple teachers in supporting the committee who would be the ones asked to be on the committee, and haven't heard anyone say they don't want a committee. And if people feel very strongly, or staff feel very strongly about not wanting a committee, I do feel they would speak up, just like the staff who want it are speaking up. They have the opportunity to say they don't want to be a part of that committee because it was too traumatizing to be on it before.
This is a chance for us to say that we are listening, even to Amy's recommendation. And we're considering not doing that. It seems.
One question I have, if there is a committee, is the committee, or it's like, Steve, you were the chair of a committee, is the complainer like notified of the next steps? Like, if you're not happy with how this is resolved, it's mandatory to tell you, like, here's what you can.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's all spelled out. And Kyle,
They have to do with so many days.
Yeah, I just hope it's
Said in the letter,
reiterated to those.
included in the letter. This is the policy we follow. This is your next step if you're not satisfied.
If they know the next step, if they're not happy with whatever because we might assume they read the policy, but I think if they're.
We reread it, we read it.
Yeah. And our teachers even trained with what to do if there's a parent, because we obviously talk about chain of command. And so most parents are directed first towards the teacher. And so if a parent emails a teacher, are we preparing the teachers with how to respond? Like, it's not just this is the rationale behind it, but then maybe the teacher gives them if you don't feel this is sufficient, you're welcome to go to the principal and we can discuss things further. Are we teaching our educators?
I would argue,
respond?
I think our teachers are frequently consulting with their principals, and their principals are doing a really great job of supporting them through that process. And we've had a number of situations this year, and the principals have helped to lead those teachers through that process.
Okay.
So I feel good about that.
Good.
Not to change the subject, but when do we talk about?
Yeah, I do want to,
Yeah,
I do want Kyle's opinion on that first paragraph of our
Here's the right
policy.
versus has a duty.
Yeah, I have that.
Can you talk about the difference in that language? This is a Neola recommendation, so I don't know why Neola would put that in there unless there's a legal.
You make that larger at all, Christie.
Just go to,
What you had. There's a Zoom. Right there, yeah.
Zoom.
I am.
Yeah.
Which paragraph was it?
It's the third sentence down,
Okay.
At the same.
right hand side.
Okay.
So has a duty is crossed
I'm
out.
not, I can't read through precisely why Neola would have put it. I guess off of the cuff, what I would say about that is that reserving it's actually meant to be in the context, something that the district is doing voluntarily to protect its employees. And there isn't an absolute duty under all of those
under law to protect district, staff and students from, for example, disclosure of confidential information. There are exceptions to that where I don't think it's about the harassment. I suspect that duty language was removed because in part, it wasn't meant to create an obligation. It was meant to create an ability on the part of the district to protect its employees. And I think that's probably a more accurate statement of case law that underlies it, would be my thoughts.
I mean, you could supersede both of that by saying the board will make every effort.
Right, for something like that, but I think that's Neola's attempt to do that right there.
Because I think duty is saying you have to, and the right is saying you have an option, but if you say the board will make every effort, then the board is saying we want to protect everyone, we'll do what we can too.
That would be fine.
I wonder if you used an extreme example of where a complaint, like for example, around a staff complaint had a very valid issue and a student, the concern around the student was more, does that make sense what I'm saying? No.
I'm not sure.
I don't know. Okay, I was just, if you go through a staff complaint and the staff did something wrong, do you have an obligation to protect the staff if they did something wrong? Do you see what I'm saying?
Right.
Neola, just saying, email Chris and like ask him why that's.
Yeah.
He's gone.
Yeah, he's gone.
We lost Chris.
I think it's a legality that we need clarification.
I would say that is a more accurate statement of law, the way that it's written there, than to have an absolute duty under all circumstances, because there are exceptions even to those things. It's the knee-jerk reaction is to want to say, well, of course, we're going to protect people against harassment. But there are some times when, for example, disclosure of confidential information is required. You know, if law enforcement comes in, are we gonna say, no, we have a duty to, we got a policy here that has a duty that bucks what's required under FERPA or something, for example. So I think reserving a right in most instances, if it was harassment or something like that, it's gonna be pretty clear cut what to do. But I think that statement of it's taking an absolute duty is not consistent with existing law.
I think it's saying that it reserves the right kind of signifies that we might decide not to protect our own staff, which sounds bad, but.
Yeah, and you would have discretion as a board if you don't like the way that.
Yeah, right. I feel like at the least we could reword it.
At the same time, the board,
We could just leave it the way it is. I mean, and we need to. I mean, it has been in there for a long time, so if we need to leave it and revise it later, but.
Unnecessary applies to each, so unnecessary harassment, unnecessary disclosure of confidential information, unnecessary and other unnecessary violations of students' rights.
I guess I would hate for that sentence to tie us up tonight when we've been using that. So it's like, let's leave it in the way it was, and let's figure out which option we're gonna choose. And then let's see. Yeah.
So you're saying to leave it as has a duty?
That's what I mean, it's been in there, so let's just leave it the way it was.
Sure.
Yeah.
I don't think as a practical matter, I would find it to be, if somebody would be coming forward saying, I'm inserting this. That you have a duty to do something that's contrary to a whole body.
And other policies we have in place.
So let's go back to that. It's probably much ado about nothing.
Will we have to amend that?
You'd have to amend your motion.
So he'll have to, if he wants to change it to has a duty.
Yeah, I guess I'm fine with it has a duty, so. My motion would still be option 2, but changing the language.
so there's a motion and a second.
Second. Sorry.
There was, but were you gonna say something?
Well, he amended it, so I was saying second.
Yeah, the language.
Sure. Yeah.
But the original motion goes back to either
My original motion was option 2.
right.
I amend my original option to option 2, but also changing that sentence up there.
Right. So there's a motion and a second to amend Mr. Gallagher's option 2 motion. Correct? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Aye. 5-1.
Well,
Well, no,
Oh, the-
we're saying nay. He's saying nay. Steve?
maybe,
Wait, so you're saying to approve option 2?
Yes.
Right.
That's what you said, Steve, so
Yeah,
I want to do the roll call vote.
let's do those.
And so you say. Aye or nay?
yeah, I want to go down the same order as I have already. So the motion is for option 2, but changing the language and sentence to back to has a duty. The second was by Schumacher. We're gonna do a roll call vote, right?
Yes.
And take your,
Yes.
okay. So starting with Nick Olson,
Nay.
Nick Schumacher.
Aye.
Brooke Taylor,
Nay.
Diane Smith,
Okay.
I am an aye. President Olson.
Nay.
So it'd be 4-2, so that fails and then it goes back to.
Yep. I make a motion that we approve the second reading of policy 9130, public request suggestions or complaints, option 1, with the has a duty put back in.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to accept policy 9130, option 1, with language to now include has a duty to. Is there any further discussion? Roll call vote.
Nick Olson,
Aye.
Nick Schumacher,
Nay.
Brooke Taylor,
Aye.
Diane Smith.
Aye.
I am a nay. Steve Olson,
Aye.
4-2. Pass.
Motion carries. Second reading of new policy 2522, library media centers.
I make a motion to accept with option 1.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Policy 2522, library media centers.
Does this have the same verbiage in it?
No.
No, it's not.
So that has a duty is not in this one?
No.
Oh, this is a brand new policy.
All right.
Option 1. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
4-2. Motion carries. There were no discussion items, informational items. This positive deletion of administrative guideline 2522 and administrative guideline 9130.
No.
We will not be deleting,
Not.
we will not delete administrative guideline 9130 because that's.
Thought it was, I'm sorry.
Or for the committee, I mean.
All right. So we will
Keep that
not
in.
keep that in.
Yep.
All right. So at that point, is there a motion to accept the policies and rules committee report?
Second.
Motion second to accept the policy and rules committee report. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Next up, other reports by board members. Ready? State convention, I thought went very well. We were one of the only school districts with all of our board members in attendance.
Diana was there.
Oh, I got it. I'm just way off tonight. Thanks to you.
But
About a
add
six,
to that, people did comment that they were surprised with us having a district with so many board members present and willing to participate in the convention. So
And I said, historically, our board's always been super engaged and we always drive the farthest and yet we always have the most people there. So
Lori's presentation was awesome.
Yeah.
Yes.
Lori Dans did a presentation. Yeah.
Bristol did too. You guys nailed it.
Yeah.
Here.
That's okay. I had a very small role.
All right. Any other district and program highlights?
Not really. There's a lot we covered tonight.
It is. Consideration of bills and pre-approved bills. Motion to approve.
Second.
And a second to pay our bills. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carried. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion adjourned.
Second. Motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, motion carries. Thank you for your patience. Don't dare me to do things.
You don't have to call me